The next VLGA member-exclusive Lunch and Learn session is on Friday the 27th of March, a free event exploring psychosocial hazards and the Council's role as the CEO's employer. Attendees will gain insight into new legislation, understanding the impact of culture, workload and role clarity, and ensuring appropriate systems of support and accountability are in place. Join the VLGA's Head of Local Government Programs and Policy, Dawn Bray, and Managing Partner from Justicia Lawyers, Melissa Scadden, as they break down the responsibilities of councillors under this emerging piece of legislation. It's on Friday the 27th of March from 12 to 1 p.m, a member-exclusive Lunch and Learn session from the VLGA. Details at vlga.org.au. Coming up, the number of councillors to be cut in Tasmania, a man fined for throwing coffee at a Victorian Council CEO, Geelong Council under fire for considering the closure of leisure centre creches, a new report places council's insurance claims processes under the microscope, a council cyber attack heads to court, but will the perpetrators face justice? A community gift turns into a legal investigation and calls for a Tasmanian council to be placed under administration. Hello, I'm Chris Eddy. This is the Local Government News Roundup. All of that and more is just ahead. Plus, we mark 5 years of the Local Government News Roundup. And I'm joined by some special guests to talk about how we got here and where we're going next. And we introduce a new Roundup flashback segment, highlighting some of the stories making local government news in years gone by. It's all brought to you by the Victorian Local Governance Association, the national broadcaster on all things local government, with support from Symphony 3, simple, connected customer experiences, and Rath Engineering Development, smarter local government systems built from real on-the-ground experience. It's Monday the 23rd of March 2026. Let's start with our Victorian report. Hepburn Shire Council announced on Friday that a community member who threw coffee at its chief executive has pleaded guilty to unlawful assault in the Ballarat Magistrates Court, receiving a fine and a good behaviour bond. The council says the outcome shows authorities are taking abusive behaviour seriously and it wants stronger protections for councils. It's urging the Victorian government to include local government in workplace protection orders and is calling on the federal government to boost the e-Safety Commissioner's powers to respond to coordinated online abuse. In Greater Geelong, the council is considering closing creches at 4 leisure centres, a move that unions say could affect 26 jobs and leave families without a key support. The ASU is warning that permanent childcare roles could be folded into generic positions, according to the Geelong Advertiser. And local MPs Ella George, Christine Cousins and Alison Marchant want the service kept. They say it supports health and well-being, especially for women. The council says each visit is subsidised by about $35 and it's reviewing the most effective way to support community health and participation. Bass Coast Shire Council has voted to start removing deteriorating dust suppression seals from 30 roads, affecting more than 570 properties. The South Gippsland Sentinel-Times reported that the council has endorsed a draft removal policy for consultation, open till April 15th, after a previous attempt was shelved amid public backlash. An independent audit found the seals, trialled between 2005 and 2007, are now at the end of life and cannot be maintained. Under the draft plan, removals would begin in 2027, with owners able to keep a sealed service only if every household agrees and pays a one-off $4,000. Mansfield Shire Council says a Victorian parliamentary inquiry has found the state government's public engagement framework has not been applied consistently and that some recent consultations have fallen short of best practice. The Legislative Council Environment and Planning Committee made 64 findings and 28 recommendations, including calls for genuine opportunities to participate and for non-disclosure agreements to be used only when there's a real need. Mansfield Mayor Steve Raby says consultation cannot be tokenistic and argues there was no meaningful engagement on the Emergency Services and Volunteers Fund levy or statewide planning reforms. A Victorian Ombudsman investigation into the outsourcing of under-excess small claims has revealed systemic issues in how the matters are managed across Victorian councils. The report highlights that more than half of the state's 79 councils use third-party contractors for the function. Ombudsman Marlo Baragwanath says the characterisation of contractors as independent is problematic.
Saying that they're independent led some people to believe that the decision on the claim was impartial by someone whose commercial interests didn't align with whether the council thought they were doing a good job. It means that when the claimant would get the decision, they may not view it with sufficient scepticism. They may have thought, oh, well, this is an independent body, that's okay. The decision must be really fairly handled.
The Ombudsman also found that many councils don't record denied claims or dissatisfied claimants as formal complaints.
It denies procedural fairness and review rights. The central protection in the Local Government Act is that decisions must be made fairly and on the merits, and with the affected person being given an opportunity to be heard in that process. We documented multiple cases where claimants were either clearly distressed or dissatisfied, that councils had failed to acknowledge that this was a complaint in part, and that no review option was explained or offered.
There are 4 recommendations in the report that the Ombudsman says all councils should consider in relation to their claims management practices. The report was tabled in Parliament last week and is available to download on the Ombudsman's website. And you can watch the full interview with Marlo Baragwanath on this week's episode of VLGA Connect. Also making news, Frankston is turning its waterfront into an open-air gallery with more than 400 tonnes of sand set to become an enchanted realm of castles, dragons and mythical creatures. The Australian Sand Sculpting Championships will run from March 28 to April 26. Frankston Mayor Councillor Sue Baker says the refreshed format should boost visitation, support local traders and showcase the city at its best. And in Moyne-shire, the council is turning empty rooms into working studios with a new creative residencies pilot for local artists. It will offer no-cost, non-residential space across 4 council sites. Mayor Councillor Jordan Lockett says community consultation found affordable workspace was a major barrier, and this program is a practical way to remove it while keeping venues available for community use. This is the Local Government News Roundup. It's Monday, the 23rd of March, and this week we're marking 5 years since the start of the Local Government News Roundup. The very first episode came out in the second week of March 2021. And as part of our celebrations, we introduce a new flashback segment looking back at some of the stories that were making local government news in years gone by. And let's go back to that very first episode. With local government elections in New South Wales just 6 months away, the state's local government minister Shelley Hancock has warned councillors of zero tolerance for petty politics and personal interests in the months ahead. Wingecarribee Shire Council in New South Wales has been given 7 days to explain why it should not be suspended for 3 months, following worsening relations between councillors and senior staff. The City of Hobart has announced the appointment of experienced local government executive Kelly Grigsby as its new chief executive. That was from the second week of March in 2021, just some of the stories that made headlines in our very first edition of the Local Government News Roundup. Some things sound a lot different, some things haven't changed. Councillor behaviour, conduct issues, still very much in the news. And that appointment of Kelly Grigsby to the City of Hobart, well, that lasted a couple of years. And of course, Kelly's back on the mainland now as the CEO of the Municipal Association of Victoria. We'll introduce a regular segment from this point on, looking at some of the highlights of years gone by. Let us know your thoughts on that by sending us some feedback. It's always great to hear what you think of how we evolve over time here at the Local Government News Roundup. One person who's been with us from the very start is the CEO of the Victorian Local Governance Association, Catherine Arndt, who's with me now to reminisce. Hello, Catherine. Great to have you here.
Oh, thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me on the program today to celebrate. I can't believe it's been 5 years already. I think back actually to a year earlier, the beginning of COVID and the launch of VLGA Connect, which you and I were there from, the very beginning. And in fact, if we go back through the archives and the footage, wow, have we certainly transitioned a lot since then. fortunately for our viewers and also listeners.
Some of those early episodes, I wouldn't mind getting the login details, Catherine, so I can just hit the delete button a few times. In fact, I think on the very first episode, we got some feedback because you had one of those standard Zoom backgrounds of the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco.
I remember, and my head was at the very bottom of the screen, and I was entirely terrified, and I didn't know what we were embarking on, but how quickly did we evolve, though? When you think back to that, we discovered that you could actually create virtual backgrounds.
Yeah.
We discovered that we could actually interview anyone and everyone multiple times a week. I mean, it was relentless. We were producing 3 or 4 videos of VLGA Connect a week in those very early days. And then we launched into the podcast space in that we had the VLGA Connect program as a YouTube video, but we also shared it on our podcast platform. But by that stage, Chris, you were working furiously to create what is Local Government News Roundup, identifying that, there was this real need and it was the perfect time to launch into a local government news program that not only looked at local issues but also national and international issues.
I think just before I talk about that, one of the shocking things in those early days, Catherine, we discovered was that people might actually watch and listen to this stuff. And it was so important during COVID, wasn't it? Because that's why it was called VLGA Connect, because it was actually a tool to connect with people in the sector and share information when we were going through all these lockdowns, particularly in Melbourne.
Absolutely. That was its purpose, and we were out there leading the way when it came to bringing content to our members and even the broader local government sector. We had the Chief Health Officer on in very early days of COVID, and just about every commissioner that you could possibly even have for a portfolio. But it was also relevant, and it did connect people. People were watching and listening and waiting for that next episode to stay connected and also get that information that they really weren't able to get in those times.
Yeah. So in early March 2021, I'd had this little seed of an idea for some time that, there was, I thought, an opportunity to present news factually from and about councils, not just in Victoria, but Australia-wide, with a little bit of international news in it. And I do remember very clearly producing the very first sort of pilot episode and sending it to you as one of a very small group of people that I wanted some feedback on. Do you remember that email hitting your inbox that day?
I do, and I remember the conversations we had in sort of lead up to that as well. I knew how much work you were doing behind the scenes, and I was really excited as CEO of the VLGA to be part of that journey, but also part of the continuing journey of Local Government News Roundup, because I can certainly see the value that it brings to the sector.
Well, you've been with it since day one. You said to me straight away, I want to be part of this on behalf of the VLGA. So since that very first episode, you've been the founding sponsor, which is can I just say thank you? It's just been terrific to have that support, to be able to build on that and to get it to the stage where it's at now, and hopefully even continuing to grow. I want to ask you, why do you still think that it's such a good fit for the VLGA to be associated with the Roundup?
Well, the VLGA is the only organisation nationally that really has a singular focus on supporting councils and the staff who work with them in good governance. And we really need to be exploring ways that we can communicate not only with our members here in Victoria, but also across borders. So it's really consistent with our strategic objectives. It's consistent with the work we're already doing nationally and globally through our partnerships with LGRU in the United Kingdom through our Global Live Executive Panel series, but also the VLGA Connect program itself as a YouTube program touches on both state, national and global issues. So having this dedicated news podcast called Local Government News Roundup, which Chris, you're the face of, this is you. We're really We see it as a very nice complement to the suite of programs that the VLGA is already running, but also what we're planning on doing in the future. As you know, we recently extended our annual Fast Track conference to a national audience, and the event was a sellout. There is demand out there for the types of programs that the VLGA delivers, but also through the partnerships that we have, because as a small organisation, we have to work in partnership with organisations like yours, and we're delighted to do that.
And can I just say, I did notice the next level that Fast Track went to this year, and I'd like to think it might be in some small part due to this association that you had people in the room from New South Wales, from Tasmania, from South Australia. I thought that was such a great thing to see these people coming from interstate to be part of this, and an example of what you've got to build on, I think.
Yeah, and the feedback from those interstate councillors has been, and executives, has been really positive. There's a demand across Australia for these types of programs. So I think in terms of the next 12, 18 months, Chris, it's only going to get busier. And we are very much looking forward to working with Local Government News Roundup to explore some of those broader opportunities.
Thank you, Catherine. It's great to have you on board in a continuing sense with the Local Government News Roundup as we move into, well, hopefully the next 5-year phase of the Roundup. And who knows where we'll be 5 years from now. But I do thank you again for your ongoing support. It's been terrific to have you on board.
And Chris, thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this. Very much looking forward to the next 5 years.
That was Catherine Arndt, CEO of the Victorian Local Governance Association, my first guest here on this 5th birthday celebration episode of the Local Government News Roundup. But we do have news as well, and let's get to our New South Wales report now. A cyber attack on Fairfield City Council is in the courts after hackers allegedly stole sensitive files and demanded a payout. According to the Daily Telegraph, the council's servers were encrypted with ransomware, and the stolen material includes personal and financial details of ratepayers, plus information about councillors and staff. The breach happened last October. The council refused to pay the ransom and has since won a Supreme Court injunction banning the unknown attackers from publishing or using the data. The court also allowed the council to serve legal documents by posting a secure link into the ransom chat room. The big question now, though, is how can enforcement be carried out with the hackers believed to be overseas? In Muswellbrook, a dispute over a community gift is turning into a legal investigation. Power FM reported that Muswellbrook Shire Council is looking into the sale of land and facilities that were gifted to the Richard Gill School after the school merged with Melos Education Group. The council says parents asked the school to return the land or sign an agreement setting out what would happen if the venture failed, but the school has declined. The land was intended to support music and STEM education, tied to Richard Gill's legacy. The council says it's written to Melos seeking assurances and has hired an independent law firm to examine the sale. Meanwhile, Muswellbrook Council is seeking feedback via SurveyMonkey on a proposed half-day public holiday to coincide with the Muswellbrook Mayor's Cup on the 3rd of November. It says the holiday would support local business and ensure the community can come together to celebrate. The push for high-speed rail in New South Wales is shifting from vision to lobbying, according to Coast Community News. Central Coast Council has teamed up with Lake Macquarie Council to take a joint motion to the National General Assembly in June, urging Canberra to progress the Newcastle to Sydney high-speed rail route. Central Coast Mayor Laurie McKenna says the councils are backing the same motion, so their message is harder to ignore. Mayor McKenna says a first stage linking Newcastle and Sydney via Lake Macquarie and the Central Coast could change how people commute and open up jobs, housing, education and tourism while helping manage population growth. A new councillor is joining Cessnock City Council after a countback of votes from the 2024 election. Fatmata Bangura has been sworn in to represent Ward B, filling the vacancy left by Chris Madden's resignation in January. Cessnock City Mayor Daniel Watton welcomed Councillor Bangura and thanked Mr Madden for his service. In Deniliquin, Edward River Council has acknowledged community frustration after a major rain event earlier this month. On the 18th of March, a short but intense downpour triggered flash flooding across parts of the town. Mayor Councillor Ashley Hall says unofficial reports show some areas received far more rain than the Bureau of Meteorology readings captured. Council crews were on the ground through the night, managing road closures and monitoring high-risk areas. And CEO Jack Bond says the event has highlighted where improvement is needed. Food waste is about to get a new bin in Newcastle and Port Stephens, with the councils teaming up early to cut costs and keep organics out of landfill. They've issued a joint tender for a private facility to process food and garden organics ahead of a planned curbside FOGO rollout in mid-2027. Albury City Council has prepared a new urban forest strategy with a target of 30% tree canopy cover by 2050. Under the plan, it would lift annual plantings from about 2,000 trees to more than 6,000 a year over the next decade. And in the Bega Valley, a tiny insect is being put to work against a prickly problem. Council biosecurity staff say early releases of cochineal, a sap-feeding insect, are weakening infestations of tiger pear cactus, a high-risk weed that forms dense thickets and can injure people, pets and livestock. Insects were raised in a council glasshouse and first released on a Millingandi property last year, and the council hopes to expand the colony to nearby sites. In other news, Goulburn Mulwaree Council has launched a brochure called Our Heritage, Our Shared Responsibility, setting out what owners and industry professionals need to know about caring for heritage properties. It covers development and maintenance responsibilities and points people to support. Byron Shire has taken its first step in electrifying its workforce fleet, adding 5 new electric vehicles with help from a $31,000 New South Wales Government Kickstart grant. The council says it marks the start of a planned phase-out of petrol vehicles aimed at cutting emissions and running costs. And in Canberra, there's a new electric bike and scooter provider. The ACT government has chosen Lime to run its shared mobility scheme. They'll take over from Neuron in April under a 3-year permit. This is the Local Government News Roundup. It's episode number 566. And through the course of today's show, we're looking back on 5 years of the Local Government News Roundup since our first episode was published in the second week of March 2021. A listener since those early days is a chap called James Rath from Rath Engineering Development, a small firm that works with local governments in New South Wales. James reached out to me about a year ago, perhaps a bit more, to tell me about how he enjoys the podcast, but also how he'd like to help out with a particular element of the Local Government News Roundup. And he joins me now. James, good morning.
Morning, Chris. Yeah, I found out about the Local Government News Roundup from some fellow local government staff and started listening early on in the year 2021, and it's now been a few years since then, that's for sure. But I've always been a listener since that time.
Terrific. And you're out in country New South Wales?
Yeah, I'm based out of Forbes in New South Wales. I've worked around at most councils in this area, yeah.
And you've been involved in local government for quite some time by the sounds of it.
I've been involved in local government for around 12 years now as a civil engineer, executive manager, as well as a director in that time. Sort of had my fingers in many pots across the place, and there wouldn't be much that I haven't sort of delved into over those years as a local government executive or engineer.
I have to share with you, James, I was speaking with a long-term listener and local government stalwart, Michael, a couple of weeks ago, and he said to me, who is this Rath Engineering Development I've started hearing about on the Roundup? I thought, fair question. Who is Rath Engineering Development, James?
Yeah, so that's my business, Rath Engineering Development. It was sort of always going to happen. I always wanted to branch into my own consultancy for local government because I feel as though I've always wanted to help local government, but as we all know, it's very hard to help from the inside. So went out on my own, started Rath Engineering Development, or RED, the brand that my wife came up with.
Yep.
And since then, I've been working for many local councils, but on top of that, I also have been developing in my technical side. I've been developing softwares that are tailored to local government, which sort the problems that I come across during my time as an engineer.
So now tell me, be honest, was the current website, which is very, very basic, the reason you reached out to me in the first place? Did you look at that and think, gosh, this guy needs some help?
Well, as I said, I've been an avid listener since early on, and I always felt the experience could be improved. Chris, yes.
You're being you're being very tactful. So for the listeners who aren't aware, James reached out to me and said, "I am a listener, but I think your website could use some work. Can I help you with this?" And I thought, what's the catch going to be here? I'm yet to see the catch. We're announcing today a brand new website that you've been working on behind the scenes for quite some time.
Yeah, so no catch. It's just my love for local government, Chris. I've always been a fan of your podcast. So, but the new Local Government News Roundup website that we've built, it's built on a platform called Astro. I've always wanted to dive into a website that uses it. There's many websites that do use it, and mainly for blogging. It allows a modern framework which is designed for speed, and it serves mostly static pages, which is exactly what you do. So worked out really well. The site will feel much faster and cleaner to use.
So are we a guinea pig for you?
Yeah, definitely, mate. We've been working on it now for the last probably 3 to 4 months hard, and there's been a lot of bugs to overcome in that time, but I really think it's at a level now where it's ready to be seen by the listeners.
Well, I'm just so grateful, James, for your expertise and your willingness to work on this with me. And I think it's fabulous. But of course, I've been in a bit of a bubble with you on this for some time. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how the listeners and the visitors to the website, of which there are many more than listen to the podcast, by the way, how they react to the site. We've also been working on upgrading the content. So one thing, James, someone reached out to me a couple of years ago and said, you've got the Victorian mayors all listed there, which is really useful. What about the rest of the country? And I thought, there's a challenge. Now it's there for the entire nation. We've been working on building up that resource for people who want to find current information about the local government sector in Australia.
Yeah, the resources hub, I think your audience will find very useful.
What else about this site do you think is a little bit different or a particular upgrade from the previous that you're proud of?
So the previous website, definitely users will straight away notice no bombardment of ads, which
Yep.
is a nice touch.
Yep.
Secondly, they will notice the speed. It's almost instantaneous, and probably just the user experience is the other thing. We've really worked on making sure that the whole page is easy to navigate, and everywhere should be intuitive. That was the whole goal with the design.
Fabulous. Looking forward to some feedback from folks as we launch this today in tandem with this special episode of the Roundup. So do you spend time working on other websites, James? How many others have you built?
Yeah, I've probably built about 5 or 6 other websites in my time. Nothing with the Astro framework, though.
Yeah.
This is my first Astro framework, so it'll be interesting to see when it goes under the stress test of your 1,000-odd users or views that I see regularly on the Local Government News Roundup, to see how it holds up.
Yeah, terrific. And the other work that you do, we've been promoting your Red GMS system. You may as well just take a moment to tell us, what is that all about and why is that filling a particular niche at the moment?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Chris, my passion is local government. I've been in it 12 years, and during that time, I come across a lot of issues working in the industry that I couldn't fix from the inside. But since being on the outside and really diving into the programming side of things whilst doing your website, etc., I've been able to have a play around with a couple of issues, mainly one that my thesis was on. Now, I did my thesis on unsealed roads. Sounds like a really boring subject to probably 90% of your listeners, but for me, it's my passion, and I love the unsealed roads, but unfortunately, they don't get the love they deserve due to time framing, resources. So I thought I'd build an application that allows directors or managers' lives to be easy. They can plug in where they're going to do their resheets or whatever it may be, stabilising, etc. And Red GMS gives them the most economical outcome, tells them where it's coming from, why it's being blended or why it's being stabilised, or why your pits within your shire aren't up to spec. It's all a simple, intuitive experience for users.
So obviously this is meeting a need, and it occurs to me as you're saying that with the increasing number of natural disaster events that local governments are dealing with around the country, this sort of information becomes even more crucial, doesn't it?
It certainly does, Chris. The age-old adage of the closest pit is good enough, I was guilty of it as a director. Generally, we just try and resource material from the closest pit to cut down on the haulage. But the main unit that we need to work off as engineers is the dollars per kilometre year. Now, that's a measure of maintenance and degradation of the material. So Red GMS was developed to showcase that, hey, yeah, the capital cost may be higher for this road, but in the long run, you're paying a lot less.
Yeah. I know you've got lots of other ideas for things you can do that can perhaps meet some of these needs that these little wicked problems that local governments have. But I think you've probably been a bit taken aback by the interest in Red GMS, from what I'm understanding. A lot of people already reaching out about that.
Yeah, I've put a couple of examples up on my LinkedIn page. I've got a lot of followers on LinkedIn, and yeah, there's been some really interesting messages come my way from your podcast. Definitely, there's been a few reach out. And from my LinkedIn page. And it's really interesting to hear the feedback. The product is already starting to pivot. Areas that I thought were really not that important seem to be the most important for people.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Look, it's been great to chat. And I just want to thank you again for the effort you've put in to build this fabulous new website. I love it. I hope the listeners and the viewers will love it as well. I'm sure they will. And I wish you the best with all of your projects. It sounds like you've got a bit on your plate, James. So even more so, I thank you for putting the time aside to work on this.
No problem at all, Chris. I look forward to it too.
James Rath there from Rath Engineering Development, and you can check out James's website at rathed.com.au. Now, as we record this episode, the new website is up and running. Some people will see the new website. Some might be still seeing the old site. Apparently it takes a little while for it to fully propagate, as they say. I know, it sounds like I know what I'm talking about, doesn't it? I don't really. But that's why James is here. So check it out at lgnewsroundup.com. And as always, we'd love your feedback. A few new elements of the website you might like to check out while you're there. You can subscribe to be notified of new stories, new episodes, or particular tags, themes that you particularly prefer, so that when we do publish something about those topics, you'll get a notification to your email inbox. Very easy to do. Look for the subscribe button up in the top right-hand corner of the page when you visit. Check it out, lgnewsroundup.com. Now let's get back to some news. On this special 5th birthday edition, we'll head to Queensland, where Whitsunday Regional Council has a new second-in-command following a leadership shake-up that laid bare internal divisions. In a 4-3 vote, councillors appointed Division 6 representative and former council CEO John Finlay as its deputy mayor. The Courier Mail reported that the vote follows the shock resignation of Michelle Wright, who stepped down claiming she could no longer support the council's current direction. Accepting the role, Councillor Finlay called for unity in the chamber. Councillor Wright, meanwhile, says she'll remain on the council to serve her constituents, but noted that integrity meant refusing to hold a title for status alone. Redland City Council says an indoor sports facility is a step closer, with work now underway on a business case for a preferred site. The location will stay confidential while investigations continue and the council decides whether to proceed. Mayor Jos Mitchell says the business case will test viability and explore funding options, including state and federal support, or a public-private partnership. Noosa Council is cutting its 4-meeting cycle down to 2 each month from May. The smaller committee meetings will go, leaving a general committee and an ordinary meeting, both with the full council present. Mayor Frank Wilkie says the aim is to make debate easier for the public to follow, while reducing the time staff and councillors spend in the chamber. The new format will be reviewed after 12 months. Dog attacks are on the rise in Lockyer Valley, and the council says prevention is a shared responsibility. Since January, it's responded to 13 significant attacks, with 9 involving unregistered dogs. The council warns breaches can bring on-the-spot fines and, in serious cases, court action, with some dogs declared dangerous or menacing and placed under strict controls. The council has also refreshed its disaster dashboard, adding a dedicated page for flood cameras so residents and emergency services can check conditions in real time. The chair of the Local Disaster Management Group, Mayor Tanya Milligan, says the aim is to help people make safer decisions and to answer the question councils hear again and again during floods: are the roads closed? The update also adds quicker links to local river height gauges
so users can reach live plots without scrolling. Big local government news out of Tasmania. The government is moving to trim the ranks of local councillors. Local Government Minister Kerry Vincent announced on Friday that the number of councillors statewide will be cut by 50. Under the plan, large city councils will be capped at 9 members, while smaller regional areas will drop to 7. The move also includes a boost to councillor allowances intended to reflect the growing complexity of the job without increasing the total cost to taxpayers. The changes are set to take effect ahead of the October 2026 local elections. A push is growing for West Coast Council to be put into administration. The Australian Services Union says the council is unsafe and unstable and has asked Local Government Minister Kerry Vincent to suspend councillors and appoint a commissioner. That's according to a report from The Advocate. The ASU says an independent safety audit found legal non-compliance, including risk management, emergency planning and asbestos controls. The council's General Manager, Scott Riley, has rejected the allegations, saying issues raised in the audit were addressed last year and claims about excessive staff turnover aren't true. Minister Kerry Vincent said he'd like to see the council bring in an independent advisor for support on governance and operations. To South Australia and on Kangaroo Island, ABC News reports that councillors are weighing a bold idea to protect native wildlife, banning any new cats from coming to the island. Mayor Michael Pengilly calls it a last cat policy and says existing pets would not be taken away overnight. Supporters argue even a handful of unregistered, undesexed cats could undo years of work as the island tries to wipe out feral cats that prey on more than 50 native species. The District Council of Yankalilla has formally received the resignation of Light Ward Councillor Tim Moffat, who has served since 2022. Mayor Darryl Houston acknowledged Mr Moffat's contribution and wished him well for the future. As the vacancy has occurred within 12 months of the next periodic election, a supplementary election will not be required. And to Western Australia, the city of South Perth is stepping back from a push to tighten who can speak at council meetings after a state-appointed monitor moved in to review how the council runs its business. Perth Now reported that Councillor Tim Howling has withdrawn his proposal, saying the monitor will now look at the city's standing orders and meeting processes. Mayor Greg Milner thanked residents who made submissions and deputations after 17 were lodged, most about the motion. The city of Coburn is putting a planned trade delegation to Vietnam, Indonesia and Singapore on pause, with councillors demanding a clearer itinerary and budget before any flights are booked. Perth Now reported that the vote was tied until Mayor Logan Howlett used a casting vote to defer the trip. Councillor Chantel Stone said the lack of detail and the wider security situation made now the wrong time for international travel. Kalgoorlie-Boulder Council has extended the appointment of its acting CEO Mal Osborne until late July. That follows advice from the council's substantive CEO Andrew Bryan that he is unlikely to return to work before the 6th of April at the earliest. And some stories out of the Northern Territory. The NT has passed a new package of local government reforms designed to tighten integrity and strengthen how councils handle complaints. The Local Government Association of the Northern Territory says the changes are overdue, but warns that key details still need to be spelled out, especially around conflicts of interest and what fees councils may face under the new Code of Conduct system. The Minister, Steve Edgington, said the reforms bring a modern, independent integrity framework, tighter procurement rules and updated financial governance so councils can better serve their communities. And a high-profile signing ceremony for the $100 million Barkly regional deal was scrapped at the 11th hour last week after a key minister failed to show. Minister Steve Edgington defended his absence during a heated question time, dismissing claims he cancelled the event, according to NT News. Mr Edgington argues the ceremony was prematurely scheduled during a parliamentary sitting and says his signature is already on the original 10-year deal. And finally to our global report with some stories from across the seas. Let's go to the UK, where in Essex a long-running plan to scrap the county's two-tier council system is turning into an election issue, according to BBC News. Reform UK leader and Clacton MP Nigel Farage says carving the county into 3 to 5 unitary councils and adding a mayor risks weakening a shared sense of what Essex is. The government says the shake-up would simplify services and save money. But Essex County Council's Deputy Leader Louise McKinlay says stopping reform now would waste years of cross-party work and make it harder to meet growing pressures like social care. The Telegraph has reported on how Leeds City Council's HR Chief, John Ebo, has emailed colleagues ahead of a Nigel Farage rally, suggesting safe space conversations through wellbeing network chats and urging staff to be vigilant in the city centre. Farage has called it woke and said nobody should fear open debate. The council says the messages were internal and not formal communications, and that the event has no direct impact on its workforce. Scotland's first Men's World Cup in 28 years was meant to come with a nationwide day off, but Edinburgh has opted out, according to BBC News. First Minister John Swinney set June 15 as a national holiday, timed just after Scotland's opening match against Haiti in Boston. City of Edinburgh Council voted the holiday down, citing an estimated £350,000 cost, plus disruption to schools, childcare and essential services. The vote was cross-party, 35 councillors against and 26 in favour. A handful of councils have backed the holiday, but most have not. In the US, before you can sell a home in parts of Thurston County, which is in Washington state, you may soon need to show how efficiently it uses energy. Thurston County commissioners have approved an ordinance requiring a home energy score, a professional assessment of things like insulation, heating and cooling, and hot water systems before a property can be listed. The county says it's part of its climate mitigation plan, and it doesn't force upgrades or change property taxes. It's believed to be the first county in the US to introduce the requirement. Critics warn the report could cost up to $350. Como News reported the rule would start in a year. The Mayor of Toronto in Canada, Olivia Chow, wants the city to draw a hard line ahead of the 2026 World Cup, asking the council to oppose any role for US immigration and customs enforcement in Toronto. CTV News reported that a motion is going to the council this week which would direct staff not to support ICE and would urge federal and provincial ministers to reject any deployment. Mayor Chow says even a limited ICE presence could create fear and undermine a global event meant to welcome the world. And in New Zealand, Marlborough's mayor is warning Parliament not to unravel a planning system the region has just spent years building. Mayor Nadine Taylor has told the Environment Select Committee the district must stay its own planning region and that the new Marlborough Environment Plan should be treated as fully operative until at least 2033. Mayor Taylor says the plan cost about $10 million and gives wine, aquaculture, forestry and tourism investors the certainty they need. She says forcing a rewrite now would hit ratepayers and create duplication by splitting land use and environmental approvals.
Chris, huge congratulations on 5 years of Local Government News Roundup. It's an amazing milestone and it really speaks to your dedication and love for this sector. Your show's become the go-to for local government professionals, not just in Australia, but right around the world. And it's due to the quality of your reporting, the care that you take with every story, the way that you track global trends in municipal governance. It's genuinely raised the bar for how we talk about local government. And I especially value the global community you've attracted because you've drawn in listeners from so many countries. People can hear themselves and each other's stories and realize that we're not alone in this. And that's what's allowed important ideas about civic culture and civility and leadership to spread much faster and further than they otherwise would have. And on top of that, you bring so much heart, warmth, and integrity to your work. You're prepared, you're thoughtful, and you treat your guests and your audience with real respect. So Chris, thank you and congratulations. It's been a joy to be part of this journey, and I can't wait to see what the next 5 years of Roundup will bring.
So pleased to have those words of support from Diane Kaelin-Sucre in Canada, who I met because of the Local Government News Roundup, and I feel like She's one of my best friends now. We talk a lot online, of course, still yet to meet face-to-face, but thank you so much, Diane, for those lovely words of support. The other reason I wanted to use a message from Diane in this special 5th anniversary show is because when you look back at the stats about the Local Government News Roundup since we started in March of 2021, the most listened to episodes of the show, the top 5, include sitting right there at number 3, Diane Kaelin-Sucre on Roundup Unfiltered, we used to call it, and the very first time we got right into the issue of incivility. That episode, which was published on March 3rd, 2024, so 2 years ago, is, as I said, the 3rd most listened to episode of the show since we began. If you're interested, the number 1 show, which was published in, let's have a look, March 17 of 2025, so there's a bit of a March theme coming here, was the Shock Document Leak, Showdown Looms and an Improper and Unlawful Action edition of the show. That's the one where we told you about the leaked report into Hepburnshire. That was a local government inspectorate investigation report that had no official status, was never officially released, and caused quite a bit of discussion around that time. The 2nd most listened to episode of all time was the Open Briefings episode, which was when some councils started to move towards opening up their councillor briefings. Of course, New South Wales has taken that much further now. That episode came out in July of 2024. And another episode of note, Stephen Wall, if you're listening, another friend of mine, he's the CEO at Wyndham City Council in Victoria. His episode of the Well-Travelled Executive series, it was the 10th edition of that series, is the 5th all-time most listened to episode of the Local Government News Roundup. So there you go. A few stats on what's been resonating the most with the listeners of the Local Government News Roundup, which I'm proud to say are right across Australia and in many countries around the world. All right, thank you for staying with me through this rather self-indulgent 5th anniversary episode. I want to say a big thank you to Catherine Arndt of the VLGA for her support, which has been there since day one, and also thank you to Symphony 3, who've been with us on the journey the past 6 months or more. They are a great supporter of the podcast. And new to the team, James Rath, who we heard from earlier from Rath Engineering Development, who's been working hard on our brand new website. It's out there now. Most of you, if not all, should be able to see it and click around and enjoy the resources. There's a resource hub, there's a subscription function, there's lots more to explore on the brand new Local Government News Roundup website. Head to lgnewsroundup.com to check it out and let us know your thoughts. And that's the latest from the Roundup, episode number 566 from Monday the 23rd of March 2026. Comments or feedback, email us at lgweeklynews@gmail.com or head to our new website at lgnewsroundup.com to find out more about this episode and others, including story links to the stories that we feature in our episodes. The podcast is brought to you by the VLGA, the national broadcaster on all things local government, with support from Symphony 3, simple, connected customer experiences, and Rath Engineering Development, smarter local government systems built from real on-the-ground experience. We record 3 times a week in the city of Greater Geelong, Victoria, on the land of the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation. I'll be back with a regular episode on Wednesday. Until then, thanks for listening, and bye for now. Support for the Local Government News Roundup comes from Rath Engineering Development, smarter systems for local government, like Red GMS, helping councils manage gravel pits and projects, track quality, test results, blending options and haulage, and know the true cost per tonne from day one. Rath Engineering Development can give you a one-off report that uses your existing pit data to pinpoint the best gravel sources for your next resheeting program or disaster restoration works, saving your council time and money. For local government systems built from real on-the-ground experience, talk to the team at Rath Engineering Development. Head to rathed.com.au to find out more.